Anglia Venues is a platform where we host events in Cambridge, and our ethos is to save churches from being demolished. So we take spaces from churches, we commercialize them, we help them, we help a client that wants to organize an event, and we're kind of the middleman, but for churches specifically. So we're gonna do more of these events, also outside of the studio. So the bigger they're gonna get, the bigger the spaces are gonna be. And as well as that, there's gonna be different speakers, there's gonna be different topics, and it's just cool. I think it's cool to save churches. I know it's something that I've never heard before, so this is why we started. And you're in Cambridge Chronicles at the moment, and I'm proud to say that we are the only studio in the world who is sponsored by Airy. So everything we're gonna do from next month onwards is gonna be cinema quality. So every movie probably you saw was shot on an Airy, and everything we will produce will be shot on an Airy too. So this event is gonna have two different kind of situations. So the first side of it will be a fireside chat with no presentations or anything. And the second part of it will be presentation. So it will be more kind of an event situation. So the way it's gonna be is that we're gonna present ourselves, the speakers will present themselves, they're gonna talk about the topics that they will have to discuss, and they will also take questions from the audience on the whiteboard, and it's just gonna go like that. So I'll keep it very short because we have 4 more speakers lined up. I'll be mostly talking about branding, and that's it actually. I'll be just talking about branding and how consistency works within branding, within a project or within a situation. So more about myself is I'm Dom. I have a photography background. I always worked at the highest levels of photography and clients. I switched to owning a studio 2 years ago now, and I think we work with the coolest people ever. So we worked in New York Times, with Kazoo, with Airbnb. Mistakes, personal branding, okay.
How far can somebody stretch a brand to have a successful campaign?
I'll take 2 more.
How does it work?
Huh?
How does it work?
How does it work? Branding? And I'll take 1 more.
How do you turn branding into revenue?
Branding into revenue. And the very final one, you have time. Anyone else?
Why didn't it work?
Okay. Okay, someone take time, please. So we're gonna speak I will speak for less than 10 minutes. Everyone else will have a chance to speak for more than 12 to 15 minutes. I'll start with why is branding important? I think we have someone in the room who teaches credibility. What was it again? You mentioned earlier you teach?
I'm not teaching. I'm helping businesses to become trusted.
Okay.
credible, and chosen.
Okay, chosen. Okay, I like that. So trusted, credible, chosen. So we're gonna start with this. So branding is something that you recognize, something that you look at and you say, okay, I recognize this because I've seen it before. Airbnb. Every time you see a campaign from Airbnb, you kind of recognize it. So it kind of stays there. If you see a campaign from Booking.com, for example, I would make this example. I would like you to see it. So if you look at branding from Airbnb and branding from Booking.com and Airbnb, you'll see two completely different worlds, if that makes sense. So with Airbnb, you always have something quirky, something nice, something new, while Booking.com is something so simple. It's like it's outdated graphics and very bad imagery. So why is branding important? It's because it positions you a lot higher over your competitors. It's something that you say, okay, well, if I have a strong branding and messaging, they will most likely buy from me. So Dom, I think that kind of adds to your question is like, how do you convert branding into money? Is like by having a consistent and successful brand, he will most likely choose you because your branding and your presentation is stronger than someone who has a weaker branding. So to take an example, let's say I want to make an example of a local example. I'd say, let's say a coffee shop, okay? So we know of Fitzbilly's? So we know of Fitzbilly's. There's dozens of other coffee shops that are local, that are old, that are well established and everything. But why do people go to Fitzbilly's more than others? Because they have good branding, they are everywhere, and that leads into sales. Because when they launch an ad and when they launch a campaign and they put a poster in, it's always consistent, it's always there, and it kind of brings credibility. So why is the branding important? It's important because it would create credibility for a customer to buy. For instance, in our case, what we did with branding is like we really focused on branding with Cambridge Chronicles. With Cambridge Chronicles, we really focused on branding because we want to establish like the ground level of credibility, and everything else that we do, it just kind of adds on top. So I think that kind of works. Once you have a strong brand, it works over the others because they trust you more. And in terms of elements of branding, what you really need to nail down is just a couple of things. Like you need a good logo that can be recognizable. It cannot be, so for instance, a logo cannot just be a sentence because it only works in a way. A logo has to be in different shapes. It has to work in every way possible. Not only a logo is recognizable, colors are recognizable. So for instance, if you go to, once again, Airbnb, I love Airbnb. Like we work with Airbnb and I believe in them. It's like they have their simple colors that if you look at a red, at least for me as someone who works with branding, I would immediately attach them to Airbnb. I see red, it's like, oh shit, Airbnb, immediately. You should kind of have the same thing. Like you should have a color palette that kind of, resembles something. Same with font. Like good font stands out. It doesn't have to be too chaotic. So for instance, something like this is a bit too chaotic if you think about it. But this is part of a brand and you kind of read it well. You get what I mean? You have to have a bit of both, but your main language has to be, you have to have consistency and it has to be easy to read. And I think that kind of works. The other thing is, like we talked about the logo, we talked about font, colors, messaging. You have to choose how you want to message yourself. How you want to write about yourself. Because if one day you speak, oh yeah, I'm super cool and I do this, and the next day it's like, hello sir, I would like to invite you to my event. It doesn't really work. So you have to be also consistent in that. So logo is key. It has to work in black and white first before it works in any other color. It has to be, in the beginning, it has to work in a square format. And then after it works in a square format, you can fit it in here, you can fit it in here, you can fit it in here, and you can kind of fit it in there. So when you think about designing a logo, first design it in black and white, and then design it in a square shape. Everything else will follow. So why is branding important? I think I covered it. It stands out within your competition because if you're selling the same thing, but your branding is better, people most likely will choose you because of your branding. It's as simple as that. I think that is how it works. This is how everyone teaches. This is how books say. So that is what branding, this is why branding is important. Mistakes for personal branding. I think the biggest mistake for personal branding is that people don't have a brand. I think people jump to a point, but it's like, oh, hey, I'll make a case of myself here because I think I'm the only one who can just talk about myself. Is that, okay, I'm Dom, I take pictures and that's it. Okay, well, to be a photographer that, like the biggest mistake that personal brands make is that they don't have a brand. They don't think as a business. They all think, oh, I'm an entity. But with the side of branding and business is like, I have to think like a business. I should have a Google profile. I should have a website. I should have a logo. I should have a business card. Like I think 90 people out of 100, 90 out of 100 photographers don't have a business card. This was again in my case. So personal branding, the biggest mistake is not to have a brand, is to think like I'm a human being that takes pictures. But the fact is that like you have to have a brand. Like, you know, what is it? Like, you shouldn't be called Domininkas photography. You get what I mean? It should be called Dom's Images, for example. That becomes a brand. You should have a logo, you should have a business card, you should have a website. So if you don't have that, that is your biggest mistake. So this is the biggest mistake that, you know, I believe that personal branding makes. Because if you don't have that, probably whatever you're gonna say on your socials, there's gonna be no credibility to back it up. I might be the best photographer, but if I don't have a brand, how does it really work? Where do people go? What do they see? You get what I mean? If I'm a public speaker, once again, you have to have a brand, but it's a little bit different. So the biggest mistake, once again, is not to think like a business.
So often I find that the personal brand comes after you've done the brand establishment, and actually, how would you approach defining that? Because it needs to have a difference.
Mm-hmm.
You are an extension of your brand, but it's a personal take. And that's super, super common. We're seeing it in the fashion industry time and time again now, that actually the personal brand, after many years of development, is much stronger than the original brand.
Mm-hmm. So what would be the question?
So the question is, what's your take on how you develop that? Because
Okay.
branding is a channel, like out of the whole marketing, it's a channel, it's one piece of the puzzle. But actually what we're seeing in the branding scope is a divide between corporate branding and personal branding. They're not the same thing, they're two different functionalities. So what would you say to someone that's building a corporate brand and is seeing this trend in personal branding? What would your advice be to them as to how to separate those two and how to approach it from a strategic standpoint?
Okay, so in terms of corporate branding, you should follow the values of the business itself. So you say like, okay, I sell bicycles, we sell bicycles, because a company, a corporate business is never alone. So it's like you kind of establish the values of the business and you create a brand based on that. So the logo, the messaging is the most important bit here. So I believe so you have to kind of divide the corporate from personal. So it has to become the business is the brand, and then you kind of put the values as branding. So which could be their ethos, their location, or whatever that is. And in terms of personal branding, the one thing that you should really put on is yourself as the face. Like you are the face of the company. You get what I mean? So this is what you put the most in. This is something that we learned from Chris Do. Chris Do, I don't know if you know about Chris Do, but he was here as our first ever event. And the one thing he said, I asked the same question, more or less the same question, was like, so how do I stand out as a personal brand? And the one thing he said is like, well, do you put yourself in front of the camera? And I was like, oh no, actually don't. So you have to really put yourself in front of the camera. You have to do it really well. What I mean is like, it doesn't have to be just like, oh yeah, I'll speak about something. It has to be scripted. It has to be thought of. It has to be ABC testing. Like, you should create media days for yourself where you say like, okay, I'm gonna choose a place. I'm gonna mic myself up. I'm gonna have all these topics. I'm gonna create 100 reels. I'm gonna publish them all and see which one works best. So the difference between corporate and personal is like corporate puts its values, personal puts its personality and persona. Like I think if you have a personal brand, you also have a persona, which you kind of act on. You get what I mean? Like for instance, with Cambridge Chronicles, I put myself in there and I put my persona in there. Maybe in real life, I'm a little bit different, but my personality is in my personal brand and attach it to Cambridge Chronicles. So corporate is values of the company, personal is your personality. And you have to really push for it. It's like you have to create, I think with Cambridge Chronicles last year, we created thousands of videos, like literally thousands. And it's like some of them no one has ever seen because we're like, fuck this shit. You get what I mean? So yeah, so does that answer the question or you think, yeah? Any other questions in terms of this? No? Okay, so this was the third question I took, branding plus systems. I think I forgot about it already, sorry. Who asked this question? Who asked the third question? Who asked the questions here? I don't remember now. Yes, that was your question, yes. How does branding work? Yes, okay. I think it kind of reattaches itself to why is branding important. Branding works is like you have to have it. Like otherwise it's not gonna work. Another biggest mistake that I wouldn't attach it to mistakes of personal branding, I would attach it to mistakes of branding itself, is that businesses or corporations or whatever, they don't have an identity document. Like people often overlook it. It's like, oh yeah, like, we're gonna create this campaign, or give me the logo, and that's it. People often, businesses often send just the logo, and everything else is up to the creative agency or creative studio or the designer. So then the font changes, then the messaging changes, then the colors change, and then you as a client get it back, and you're like, what is this? You don't have it because you don't have an identity document. It's like a Bible. The way we use an identity document, we use it as a Bible here. So for instance, everything we do has the basics, which is the logo, how you use the logo, how you use the font, how you use the colors, how you speak to this and how you speak to that. So when our designers pick up something, they kind of just they know what to do, just they put their own vision in it. So how does branding work? It works well if it has the basics, and if it doesn't have the basics, it's probably gonna go wrong. Just purely because every time you're gonna produce something, it's gonna be different. And if it's gonna be different, it's gonna go back to the cases why is it why am I not monetizing? You're not monetizing because your branding isn't consistent. That is that is the basic level of branding. And as a branding studio, we see this often. Clients come to us and it's like, can you design this campaign? It's like, yes, we can. Do you have a brand identity document? They're like, what is it? And we're like, oh, fuck. How are we gonna work with you? We often refuse clients because they cannot provide us with an identity document, and they don't want to pay for it because they don't believe in it. So if you think that, branding is important, and you should as a marketeer or as any other professional creative, you should have the basic guidelines. At least the hex of your colors, the font, the logo should be at least an SVG. You cannot send me a JPEG. You get what I mean? So this is the very basics of what you need to do. And branding works really well if the basics are there and if it's consistent. And then you can attach it to everything. Every post you're gonna do on social media, you'll speak in the same way. Every post that you're gonna do, you're gonna design it in the same way. Every picture you're gonna take, photographic identity. This is something that not many people talk about. For the photographers in the room, a photographic identity is as important as a brand identity. Because if I'm gonna call a photographer that is you, and then I'm gonna call you next, but my brand is the same, you should follow what we need, not what you think. You get what I mean? So a photographic identity is also as important. You should have guidelines where it's the picture should look like this. If you're gonna give me something else, it's probably not gonna work because our brand speaks like this. So there's different branches of identity. So yeah, so design identity, photographic identity, and video identity too. Intros and outros for a video. When you see Netflix, you see Tuton, you're like, oh fuck yeah. There should be the same with your brand, because that is what it is. That is consistency. And it's on the design. The branding is not only design, it's also photography, it's also videography, it's also your messaging, it's also how you look and how you feel. Does that answer the question? Okay. That was VC stretch. So Don, they answered this? How you transform branding into money? Ish, did I? Okay. The stretching of a successful campaign, I think it's a bit limitless, Ola. It's really how much. I think it depends from the budget. How far can you stretch a campaign? It really depends from your budget. I think the limit is by having your values. Every company should have its values. So for instance, we don't use stock images, we don't use sound, we don't use stock sound or whatever that is. I think it's good for marketing campaigns to go completely bollocks. You say, I have a business, I would spend £100,000 on doing something different because it might work. I think the last campaign that kind of stood out to me was IKEA. IKEA made this campaign of a fake lollipop and with the taste of meatballs. And that was completely fake. It was IKEA food, yeah, Chupa Chups, no. But what they did is they completely invested in a campaign that they pushed for. They're like, okay, let's do something completely out of our order and let's see how it goes. And they went for it, and now people are requesting and they're actually producing a Chupa Chups with the taste of a meatball. It's crazy. I know it's crazy, but it works. I think there's a risk element to it, and it has to be calculated. I'm sure that IKEA's marketing team, they were like, okay, we're gonna push for it, we're gonna trick some people, but if this works, we actually can pull something off, and now the whole internet speaks about it. I think that something that happened to us recently, and that was my fault, by the way, there was this trend of, that was this for you, sir. There was this trend of Kanye West in places, just purely because he got banned from UK. So I thought of a campaign that we would generate Kanye West in Cambridge doing Cambridge things, like cycling, getting a degree, being in a Mayball, pushing a punt, and that kind of backfired at us real quick. I posted and people came to me was like, what the fuck are you doing? I believe that you want to be one of the best studios in the world. You're using AI in a very bad manner. I was like, yeah, you know what, fair enough. Like, you know, I can't, like I pushed it too far. So I think the way, like you have to risk it, and then, you know, the outcome can be positive, but you also have to think about the negative side of it, which could be like, okay, this will backfire at us, and, you know, it could ruin the reputation a little bit. I think it has to be to a point where it's like, it doesn't touch politics. It has to come to a point where it doesn't touch, what else doesn't it touch? Like, I think as long as you don't touch politics and you follow the values, it shouldn't backfire at you. But I think you can stretch really, really far by creating a campaign that has different colors, a different concept, a different brand. Like I've seen this campaign of a shoe brand, and it was absolutely amazing. This was this lowest level shoe manufacturer in America. And what they did is they opened up a shop in a shopping center. They give it a different name, they gave it a different kind of feel, and they put the price up by, I think it was 10,000%. So if a shoe was costing, like I say, 10 pounds, it was then costing 1,000. And it worked. And it kind of worked. And I was like, wow, people were coming. I was like, oh my God, look at this shoe. I just bought it. I spent 1,000 pounds. And then by the end of the campaign, they were like, yo, by the way, this is like, you know, this is this brand, and people couldn't believe it. So it works. I think stretching a campaign can be successful as long as you don't touch politics and you do something creative about it. I think that's how far you can stretch it. Does this answer the question? Is everyone happy with that answer, you think? Yeah? And branding system, that was the last question from Dom. How do you turn branding into money? It's that. It's like, it's getting the customers to choose you over some other competitors. So in your case, you're a marketing agency, aren't you? Marketing business. Marketing strategy business? What would you say it is? Like, I would like to know.
It's a local marketing.
You need to work on your brand.
Local marketing, here we are. You see, it jumps back to that. Actually, it jumps back to that.
We operate in a world where marketing agencies are really...
Such a bad word.
It's a dirty word in industry because high retainers...
Why?
High retainers...
Okay.
Everyone's been scammed by an SEO company.
They've had a bad
PPC
experience.
company, hijacked by their website. It's just, you know, it's
bad
dirty.
advice, and it's agency-led, not client-led.
Okay.
What we do is we look at the whole end-to-end business, right? That can be how the buyer journey from start to end, from, you know, manufacturing down to end result, and we look at what's not working, and that sometimes touches marketing for sure, and a lot of the time it does, right? It's like, give them really good foundations, good branding, good solid consistency across all those touch points, and that unlocks a lot of growth potential. But we do it in the client's best interest,
Okay.
no matter what it is. And sometimes it's not even that, sometimes it's operational. And it doesn't really matter to us, because what we care about, I don't care whether someone thinks we're a social media agency or we build websites or whatever your takeaway is, that's completely fine. But what we do is we help make sure that that brand is set up for success for the long term, not just for 6 weeks after we finish doing our work.
Okay.
And that's a very different take in this industry. And I think that's where we have our marital problems, is by arguing over how do you position that. Because ultimately what we're doing is we're just helping businesses thrive. And it doesn't really matter what that is. Like we've between us, manufactured and sold and marketed products in lots of different industries for lots of different high wealth brands. And so, I can pick up in all sorts of places, and that's what we want to do, but for your local butcher, your plant shop, your retailer.
Okay. So my question here is, going back to the question that you asked them, is like, how do you put branding into money? Is literally like, find out who you keep competing against and make sure you build a stronger brand. And that, I think that will be the only thing you will need to do in order to kind of win over them and monetize more people. I think that will be it.
Yeah, I mean, I want to hear the other speakers, so I won't take up too much time, but I think that's really oversimplifying it. But I get where you're coming from, but I think it's not that black and white.
It's never black and white. There's always a gray element in it. But in terms of branding, how do you monetize that is literally that. You cannot monetize branding. It's like, it's a thing. Yeah, it's that. It's like, it's that. Yeah.
Advisors over everything and every channel. So I agree. Dom's being facetious.
Fair enough, that's fair enough. And
It's a Friday night appointment today.
and before we move on to where's Ollie? Ollie speak. Oh, okay, cool. Okay, so while he's there, I'll take one more question if anyone is interested. Anyone else?
How has branding changed over the years?
Not much. Not much. Branding hasn't changed that much. It's always been about consistency. It's always been about the logo. What has changed is the channels of it. It's how do you advertise on different channels? Or how do you keep that branding on different channels? It used to be buses, it used to be newspapers, it used to be the radio station. Okay, now it's social media, and there's different branches of social media. So it has changed in that, but the basics of branding hasn't changed. We still apply the same techniques from 1888. You get what I mean? So it hasn't changed. It has changed a lot in certain ways. It hasn't changed a lot in many other ways. The basics are the same. The communications of it are different. Okay. Well, if you have any other questions, thank you very much.
I am a director of a company called Sorted Content. So director, basically, I'm the only person within that business. I've been going for 4 months. So it's a content creation agency, based, focusing on businesses within Cambridge. But my kind of background is video production, photography, that sort of side of things. So I started out on my journey when I was 17, 18, went to school, wanted to do media studies, all that sort of stuff. It wasn't offered at my school, so I had to teach myself on that whole journey. Went through kind of the whole journey of doing content creation, learning by trial and error. Left school, worked nights, basically built up a first video production business during that time. That was called Enjoy the View. Ran that for 7 years up until the age of 25 and kind of focused on building a retainer model. So I worked with lots of different clients on regular content creation. So I had all sorts of different businesses, focused around the Cambridge area, but would also travel further afield sometimes. Within that business as well, I worked with Cambridge United, so as their club videographer at the time. And then part of that journey also involved me working for a company called Football Fun Factory, who were a kids football coaching franchise. Essentially worked with them. They started out with me at half a day a month, content creation, grew that to a day a month, and then a couple of days a month by the end of it. And they essentially offered me a full-time role. At that time, there was all sorts of those cool life things that you do. You want to go buy a house, get engaged, that sort of stuff. So I managed to do all that stuff through my role at Football Fun Factory. Essentially joined the business when they were at around 35, 36 franchisees, first employee within the business. So the first employee they took on board was the head of content, so someone to create all their content and basically run their strategy and their marketing. And by the time I left at the back end of last year, there were 136 franchisees, 12 head office employees, including a bit of a marketing team within that. So they had a head of paid advertising, a head of organic social media, and then myself sitting as a content creator within that business as well. Decided within that journey that I didn't want to work for someone else the whole of my life. I'd obviously ran a business previously as well, quite passionate about the local area, grew up in Newmarket, spent loads of time in Cambridge, and thought that what I was doing at Football Fun Factory could be replicated across other businesses as well. So I took the leap at the start of this year to go and work for myself, built Sorted Content, and that's where I've got myself to now, 4 months in. We work with a variety of different businesses, so estate agents, builders, and then lots of personal brands as well across the local area. And essentially what I'm going to give you guys the opportunity to ask me some questions on how you can build a bit of a content strategy for yourself. So yeah, I'm happy to dive over to the whiteboard. If people have got questions for me in terms of how you could build a content strategy for anything from, I guess, a small one-man band. So my smallest client is a sports massage person. Literally spend half their month with them creating content for their social media, up to an estate agency firm who I create all their content and then run their socials as well. So anything kind of within that realm is something I can help you with, as well as Football Fun Factory size businesses where you've got a high turnover, high number of franchisees, and a paid and organic social strategy. So if anyone's got any questions on how you would go about creating that kind of content strategy, feel free to, let's go for it. I am quite consistent with my own social media, so I have a bit of a plan in terms of what I post. So I post out 5 times a week across my LinkedIn, and then I try and post at minimum once on my main feed on Instagram, and then try and post on my stories every day. So I use my LinkedIn to kind of keep people updated on what's going on within the business. So different clients that I'm working with, different shoots that I've been on, how things are going for my different clients, just to kind of give people a bit of an insight as to sort of the success that my clients are having, how it's working for them, that sort of stuff, and also kind of have a bit of storytelling within that as well. So kind of the journey of me essentially quitting my job, starting a business, all that side of things, through to sort of seeing the success of my clients. So that's kind of what sits across my LinkedIn. On my Instagram, I do sort of a weekly recap each week, which kind of covers off the personal side of things. So when we talk about personal branding, sort of business branding as well, my Instagram, I sort of predominantly use my personal brands to market the business. So Sorted Content has its own socials, probably post 2 or 3 times a month on those, but with my personal brands, I'm kind of posting across those pretty much every day. So with Instagram, sort of a weekly recap, which is kind of a photo album with sort of 15 to 20 photos I'll post across, which will be things that I've been doing with clients, kind of that journey of running a business, but also like the personal side of things as well. When I say that I'm quite passionate about Cambridge, I'm a Cambridge United season ticket holder, sort of spend a lot of time within the city and kind of work that into my own personal brand, which kind of attracts clients that I enjoy working with, but also enjoy working with me. A lot of my clients sort of have a couple of things in common. So whether they're a football fan, they like going for coffees or whatever, or they like supporting local businesses, that sort of stuff kind of attracts the different businesses I work with. So my kind of way of getting retainer clients is just posting consistently, showing them that my socials are good, their socials can be good through having a consistent sort of social strategy as well. So I do that through my own content creation, but it's kind of not at the same level as what I try and do for my clients. Yes, Renata.
You just doing posting, or you supporting others as well?
I just do, in terms of what I do as a business.
No, like you're making the post on LinkedIn and just visualizing that. You did the post, you shared it, yeah?
Yep.
And you left it and go, or you contact and comment, support others on LinkedIn doing the similar stuff?
Yeah, so I guess you sort of have those people that you tend to engage with, the people that you kind of feel comfortable with. So there's other videographers that I engage with, other local businesses. So a lot of my clients, I'll engage with their posts. For example, I work with the rugby club, so I engage with other clients and other businesses within the local area. They then kind of engage back with me, that sort of thing. There's almost a bit of a circle. There's a few familiar faces. So Seb, for example, someone that engaged with my stuff, I try and interact with his stuff as well. So those sorts of things where you're interacting back and forth, you keep yourself a little bit top of mind in terms of sort of what I do through the...
Yeah, and this is like really, really important, and there's so many people I've spoken in the past, you know, they simply post it, leave it as they busy.
Yeah.
But that don't work like that.
Yeah, if you're just throwing stuff out there to people and not kind of engaging back with it, yeah, you're taking but not giving anything back to people. So that's kind of the approach that I try and take, is I try and put stuff out there. Ultimately, it can sometimes get busy, and I am guilty of sometimes not engaging back with people, but for the most part, if I see stuff that I can engage with, like with, for example, someone sticks up an Instagram story, there's a builder that I work with, his guy that does the tiling for him, he posts up a video of him doing it, and I engage with that, but that then leads to him inquiring about having a video of his tiling work and stuff like that. So it's those little kind of, just keeping yourself top of mind, and that's kind of where it sits in terms of the regular content creation. You're sitting top of mind for your clients, and then you have that little bit where you kind of just drop a like on it or something, and like, ah, Ollie's still there, I need to get that video booked in, or need to do that sort of thing, and that's kind of what's worked for me.
Exactly that, because that fine line between what you just explained, your ideal client is seeing you, he is not necessarily interact with you, or like with you, making likes.
Yeah, they sit there silently, and then they decide that that's the moment that they need to. 100%, yeah.
That's a question.
Yes.
Do you purely focus on content creation, or you sit on the strategy side, or a bit of both?
So when I ran my first business, it was very much focused on content creation. So my background is taught myself to be a videographer, went and done loads of videos and stuff for people, and that was kind of how I went on the journey. When I went to Football Fun Factory, I joined thinking that I was going to be head of content, and that was kind of going to involve, here's a bit of a strategy, Ollie, we're going to follow along with this, you create the content. I then ended up within 2 weeks managing all the social pages, so we'd schedule out. We had a goal at Football Fun Factory to post 3 times a day across all of our social platforms, which when you're a sort of start business and you just want to be in everyone's faces, that works really well. It's then creating the content for that kind of, and it worked really well for us. I know it doesn't work for every business, and sort of a lot of the businesses that I work with, where they're that sort of franchises, it works well for. And we had 2 different sort of audiences. So we were trying to sell franchises, but also try and get kids onto programs for the franchisees. I would probably advise that you maybe post 2 or 3 times a week across your platforms for most of the clients that I work with.
So how do you empower your clients to take better content themselves? Because we all know that small businesses do not have, or even, you know, businesses with decent budget, they're putting it into paid, they're putting it into things that they can track results.
Yep.
Organic socials are a brand building, trust building exercise. So it's very hard for them to see the value of putting budget there.
Yep.
So often if they want to take off a lot of that doing grunt work.
Yep.
So how do you empower them and teach them to take better quality content?
They have a strategy that they follow, and it's almost a little bit of a plug and play. Here's the content, here's the strategy. You guys feed it out for the most part. Then it's kind of one of those ones of, I would say to the client, for example, like the building one's a good example in that here's all the stuff that's going out, share this across your profiles as well, and then add a couple of bits and pieces in that kind of slot around everything else that is a little bit more rough and ready. So you've got that nice sort of polished look to things. And then also, yeah, a little bit of like the authenticity side of things as well. But that's kind of how I would suggest to them. I mean, these are businesses that are kind of using me for half a day to a day a month for the most part. So the time's a little bit more valuable. So they do need to kind of be self-starters a little bit as well.
Yeah.
They have their brand stuff, but then when it comes to personal brand, they need to run that a little bit themselves. But they sort of have the basis to do that with their business having consistent quality and content going out anyway, that they at minimum can share stuff, but the more they do, the better. But it kind of is driven by them a little bit.
Your process of like ideation, if you're posting so much across the whole week, how do you come up with those ideas consistently that don't become repetitive and boring?
Yeah, so probably the best place to sort of work from that is one of my clients. He's a one-man band sports massage therapist. It's a really interesting industry to try and film because you're essentially just filming a guy doing massages for the most part. So what we do is, which is interesting for sure. So essentially what we do with him is we've kind of mapped out a content strategy where he has a couple of videos that he puts out a week, a photo post that he'll put out a week, so we capture photos on his content day as well. And then he essentially will top that up with some Instagram stories of him sort of running a day-to-day of the business kind of thing. So that content strategy of video stuff sort of looks like a couple of client testimonials per month, a couple of almost like authority pieces per month where he kind of gives some insight into different injuries that he sees, different ways that he would treat things. We always do a couple of sport-specific things as well. So, for example, at the moment it's marathon season, so we've done a feature on the Newmarket Half Marathon, which is coming up next month. And then we've also done something on High Rocks as well, because there's lots of High Rocks events coming up. And then we sort of almost have a couple of extra videos that kind of sit as like, for example, we done one this month on his dog Reggie, who's a dachshund, that we kind of done like the customer journey of a customer, but kind of tapped into the dog side of things. So we always have a couple of videos that we change out each month, but almost have those pillars where client testimonials that kind of showcase other people talking about how useful he is as a person, a couple of pieces that kind of showcase him as this knowledge kind of fountain sort of thing, a couple of bits and pieces that are kind of timely bits of content, and then a couple of bits and pieces that almost sit as like a just nice to watch bit of the sort of storytelling, personal brand side of things as well. And then he's got his images that he can kind of write his captions out with as well. He essentially gets all that content, gets a strategy in terms of this is what we recommend posting out on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, for example. And then he goes and does all the caption writing and all that sort of stuff. But he's essentially got the content, got a plan to follow, and there's action in that and is seeing good results. So for example, he said, and I wouldn't necessarily put it completely down to content creation and sort of having all that content. You sort of compound as your business grows and stuff, you get more clients, but he's kind of seen since he's doing more content creation, he's kind of feeling that he's having that effect of I'm doing more content creation, being more consistent. I'm seeing more consistency in terms of clients that are booking in as well. So it's working quite well for him in terms of that one-man band. Let's go for it. I've not written any of these down, but hopefully it's still proving useful. So I started when I was 17. In terms of sorted content, I started on January the 2nd this year. Yeah, so I'll pay myself for the first time next month.
Do you think some businesses or activities are easier to market than the others? Because I do understand, I work myself for a charity.
Yep.
So some of you have heard. And I think, we have spoken about low budgets, right? Depending now what charity, you can't, put a photo of something because there's a GDPR regulations and that sort of thing. What So I was hoping that you work with some sort of charities or not-for-profit organisations, so you could give more advice, but probably not.
Yeah, so within the previous business, I used to work with Live in Sport, who were like the Active Sports Foundation for Cambridgeshire. So they were a charity business. And then there's a business called Newmarket Nexus, who are like a not-for-profit charity in Newmarket that we're looking at working with. So there's kind of that safeguarding aspect. Football Fun Factory as well, we had like safeguarding aspects of, you would have certain kids that can't feature on camera, that sort of stuff. There's always kind of like updates that you can do. So for example, if it was kind of you were running a charity, for example, and you wanted to do a feature on, I don't know, there was maybe kids that were challenged in school, for example, and there was an example that we had with Live in Sport where we was doing a feature on the basketball program they ran in Peterborough City Centre. And there was a lot of the children that were unfortunately in trouble with the police. So they couldn't feature on camera. There was sort of ongoing situations with those. So we would have kind of the people that were delivering those programs speaking on camera, essentially about the programs, kind of the benefits that it has. You don't get that kind of real impact from the people that are experiencing that firsthand, but you still get that kind of storytelling and still get the message out there of, this is what we're doing with this program, this is how it works, this is the impact we're having. You can kind of be clever with the angle sometimes, in terms of it might be the back of a head or it might be feet kind of thing, or some sort of close-ups on bits and pieces. But I think that it's there's always a way of telling that story. It's just finding the right way of doing it with constraints. So for example, with a charity, when you've got those safeguarding aspects, it is just people that work within the charity can speak on camera, I would always say, and that kind of navigates that. So that would be.
Actually, so my question was really, what is there a formula for every business, right? Because I do get it. If you have your own, bakery shop, there's lots of content and lots of, things to post. When you work with vulnerable people and a very strict sort of basic, boring day-to-day operations, there is not much content I think you can share. Is there a formula of success for all of the businesses? Is it like something we just...
Yeah, I think if there was something for all the businesses, it's the storytelling of the business, the people that operate that business. There'll be people that work within the charity that have got amazing stories, whether they're volunteers, whether they're the founder, whatever it is, and that can be the story of it, because people come on board and follow that journey. That was probably the biggest reason why Football Fun Factory was successful, was because we kind of told the story of the brand. People wanted to be part of that brand. When you tell the story of the charity and sort of how the founder started it, for example, how these other volunteers come on board, what impact we're having, you don't need to feature any children or vulnerable people within that. You can tell that story using the people that are there. So I would say that like the storytelling of the people that work within the business, I think that's why I've had relative success, is because people have kind of seen, this is just kind of a normal guy that didn't have any qualifications that wanted to go and start a business, and he works reasonably hard to try and do it. And people kind of buy into that a little bit. They want to try and support you. And like my clients, when I post on social media, I posted yesterday that I'm going to pay myself for the first time. One of my clients is like, it's amazing that you're able to do this. We love being on the journey with you, that sort of stuff. So it is one of those ones that the storytelling of a business is something that is kind of, every business has got a story, whether you're the big business or literally the one-man band sports massage guy.
And the last question.
Yeah, of course.
Do you think it's possible to brand, market and advertise on a low budget?
Yeah, I would say so. So my sports massage client pays me £450 a month, which I don't think's, I appreciate it's expensive to some people, but to someone like him, like he finds that money and ultimately he's growing his business through that. So I think that a lot of businesses, they can find that, but if they don't have the budget, there's loads of people that are trying to get experience out there. There'll be loads of people that are coming out of school at the moment that are looking to build their portfolio, where if you can build a strategy for them and say, look, we haven't got any budget at the moment, but we want someone to come in and do this content creation for us. Here's the strategy, here's the ideas we've got. Can you run with this and create that content? You could do it with zero budget and a volunteer basis as well. Yeah, interns, 100%. I mean, football, like Cambridge United use interns quite a bit to do their content creation. They're a League 2 football club at the moment. At the moment, I don't know, we'll see about that. But yeah, so you can do it on a real small budget, you can do it with absolutely no budget, or you can do it with a big budget as well. And as long as you've got that storytelling aspect, I think you'll still get the same outcome. John, go for it. Crispin?
I think it's very time-consuming for the business owner. You're going to spend a lot of time doing
Yeah, it 100% can be time consuming. So when it comes to someone like Josh, for example, who's a sports massage guy, if he was sitting there and he was filming himself all day and trying to get his lighting set up and then set his phone up and plan his scripting out and then think about what am I going to do every month, he doesn't sort of, essentially he stops it quite quickly, where when he's almost committed to, okay, I know I've got Ollie for half a day a month, like he's going to come in and I need to make the most of this time that I've got him, but I also know that I've got the plan I need to follow along with. He's a lot more committed to it, he has the plan to do it, and he's ultimately only committing half a day of his time a month, where that's essentially going to result in a bit more income for him. So it's...
Going personally.
I go in personally for my clients, but then for other clients, for example, with my personal brand, on a Sunday evening, I'll look at what my calendar looks like for the week. I'll write out all of my posts and I will sort of, so for example, like today I posted that I sponsored the rugby club. So I knew that I needed to get a picture of me sponsoring the rugby club for my post today, but that post is all written out. All I need to do is get the picture throughout the week and then post it. So that's probably taken me half an hour on a Sunday evening to write out my post for the week, know what I'm going to capture alongside what I'm doing day to day, where it's literally 5 seconds to take a picture. I've taken 5 pictures here kind of thing that I can use for my post on Monday. So I've probably spent half an hour doing my personal brand over the course of a week. So I don't think that takes too much time, and it's sort of one of those ones of, it's how much you kind of value your personal brand as well. And it's one of those ones of, some people don't value a personal brand, some people do. I would recommend having a personal brand if you don't have a brand as well. Go for it.
One more question and then we'll go on.
Yeah, cool.
So what softwares or platforms do you use to, because you're like doing content for multiple people,
Yep.
do you use any like software to organize it, like Planable?
Yeah,
or,
so I use,
how do you schedule it?
in terms of managing my day-to-day, I use Trello. So for all of my clients, we'll essentially have a sort of planning list of shoots to capture, and that will include what videos we're going to have in terms of deliverables, what the shoot days look like, that kind of sits within there. So plan that all out at the start of a week, start of a month, whenever we kind of get the shoots come in. Then when I'm out on shoots, it'll literally be a case of on my phone, go through and tick off, have we got this video clip, have we got this interview, have we got all the stuff that we need for this deliverable? Then when it comes into the editing, I literally go through and just follow along with that. So Trello's kind of like the whole resource for me in terms of like a project management type thing. It's what we used at Football Fun Factory to kind of manage the whole business as well. So it works quite well. It's really user friendly. Yeah, I really like Trello. It's quite easy to pick up, use. So I recommend it to my clients and stuff as well. But yeah. All good. Cheers.
Now let's imagine we are marketing a brand of baby food. And you have this amazing fruit puree, which are, I don't know, bananas freshly picked from the trees, and everything is like exquisitely fresh. It has like nutrition elements, it has B12, it has amino acids. And then think about the mom. The mom at home, she's very busy. She's probably already got a job. She's got the child who's like, I don't know, 2 years old, 3 years old. She's got her hands full and she's looking at her phone, and you post something about the amazing nutritious meal for your child as a snack or something, and she's like looking at it, loads of text. Amazing, maybe it's a valuable product, maybe it's extremely helpful. She's not gonna really read it until the end. She's gonna scroll past it. She doesn't have time. And you're gonna think, but hang on a minute. I was thinking in my head about this audience persona. It's a mother, she's around, let's say, 35 years old, probably. She's got a job, she's busy, she wants her child to eat good. However, have you thought about her time? Have you thought about how she's feeling at that particular moment when she's reading your post? Probably not, because emotions are not being found in data. And whilst they say, yeah, data is important, it's also important to think what other people think while they read your content. So again, when it comes to like blog writing, social media content, posts, branding, everything, I think it's crucial to think, so where are these people? What are they doing? And how are they feeling?
How would you find out about these feelings? Because most of the time, you get these data analytics of like the age,
like with the front, but
Yeah.
really get the feeling side of it.
Yeah.
Digital assembly.
Yeah, so it's a very tricky thing because even though I kind of say, oh, don't look at the data, do look at the data, because then by seeing how some of your posts perform or some bits of content and how far people actually get in reading them, you can sort of understand that, okay, that actually causes some reaction. And if people leave heartfelt comments and they kind of want to discuss it, that means that it does sort of strike a nerve, and you would want to move along with that. So you can do the A/B testing, even on organic, just to see what works, what doesn't, and therefore like say, okay, that's got a better hook, that's got an emotion that we want to convey more, and that's going to drive people kind of further in the funnel. So, any other questions?
Different, but you mentioned you went to university, but you don't use your university degree anymore. Do you think would you go again if you were happy to go?
So yeah, because I have a bachelor's degree at the moment in foreign languages and translation. So, but I would love to do something probably on branding or digital marketing and AI. However, I think that kind of at this stage of my career, even though I was thinking, oh, should I go and get an MA? Then I stopped and thought to myself, I want to figure out what I want to specialize in first, because the marketing field, as some of you have been saying, is so broad. There is so much to do here that you get overwhelmed, and then you don't want to make a choice, sort of, hot-headed and then regret it. So you kind of, as I go, I've started sort of figuring out the aspects of marketing that I've been enjoying very much. Because when I was younger, when I was like 18, I loved doing content, filming content. And now I'm at the point when I still enjoy doing it, but at some pace and at a lower scale. So I like strategizing more. I like thinking about campaigns, thinking about doing something bigger with bigger impact. And as you move on, sort of you learn more about the industry and see you can kind of half predict where it might go, and you would think that, okay, I'm going to make an investment in myself and in my education when I see that that's going to be really beneficial for me in the future. So it's like a bit of a strategy and personal branding as well, I guess. Hi, yes, please.
You mentioned AI. So love it or hate it, we're all going to need to adapt it, right?
Yeah.
We use AI in social media workflows for anything to do with social.
A lot of that. Like, I usually adore AI, and there are a lot of there is a lot of controversy about it, and some people really don't like it. However, I find it very useful in, as we say, sort of test trialing some things. And I've done a few courses on prompt writing. If you do a very good prompt, you can even imagine this scenario of how your audience would potentially react to a specific piece. So you say to your AI, like, I don't know if you use like Copilot, ChatGPT, Gemini, anything, pro versions are always better, by the way. You just go in and say, okay, imagine you are, I don't know, a person this kind of years old, and you just load it in with your customer persona, and then you ask a question. So if you kind of go on commute at X time and you see this post on your phone and it's going to be about like this X, Y, Z, how would you feel and what would you think about it? And sometimes it might come up with some scenarios like, oh, no, I'm not sure about that because have you thought about me being busy and being on the phone to my family because I'm this age gap and I have children that are going to school? And you would not think about it as a normal person because it just would not cross your mind because you're a marketer, you're busy, you're looking at data. However, and again, it's not always like to be trusted all the time, but it can help you to sort of define what to try on next. That's like one of the avenues. And of course, again, like help in writing copy for me as well, because I'm not a native English speaker. Some things when it comes to writing in English I find quite challenging. And to be able to match the language of people I'm writing for, I sometimes go in and I'm saying, okay, so what's a catchphrase for this? How would you phrase it? What are the day-to-day slang phrases you would use for that, so that people who would read the post, they would understand them and they wouldn't find it as heavy and textbook written as it could have been if I wrote just from me. As in, because yeah, I've studied at a university, so my English is very much like, okay, sentence should be structured, but AI helps me to find these sort of, to make it more colourful in a way. So yeah, that's it. Hi, yeah.
For data, brand campaign? What are the best tools to use?
Oh, I think it depends on if you want a targeted campaign as a paid campaign, because then you have like again, is it a social media campaign, is it email campaign, is it kind of many different avenues, and I do have a preference. Twitter, YouTube, yeah. So yeah, I think like for data, again, you just look at the analytics there, and you again like look at your target audience who you think might be your target audience, and also I think it's essential to remember that you can't sort of market yourself to everyone. Like you might look at your audience and they're very diverse, but I think it's very good to pick a specific niche in it and kind of go with it. And as long as like you get these people on board and then you keep them and you kind of move on and slightly make it wider, as like what often happens with people on personal blogs. They start with something very specific topic and they drill it until they get very popular, and then they add in their personal life, their other hobbies like sport, everything else. So you kind of stay within that. But yeah, again, getting data is like from, also you can steal it, I wouldn't call it stealing, but from your competitors. So look at what's worked for similar profiles and either try a similar thing or go with something completely different and see if people who are interested in that topic are going to actually appreciate your fresher approach to that. As we were talking before, I was like wondering how far can you set the brand? So that's what I was thinking. How far can you go from the norm so that you actually get people on board with you? So that's, yeah. Cool. Any other questions? No? Cool. Thank you very much.
Before we go there, what's your experience? You work in marketing, you work for a charity.
Yes, yeah.
You worked in have you ever worked in a company that is not charity?
So I worked in an agency, marketing agency, and I have done freelancing as well before that. So
how does marketing, generally speaking, work differently between a charity and business?
Ooh, that's yeah. I'm like, oh, that's a meaty topic because that's actually, it's been something that moving from an agency environment I've been enjoying hugely. Because I guess when you talk about businesses, again, it's very important to sell. And whilst, again, in a charity setting, you are kind of selling the idea and you're selling the concept so that people would buy into this concept by A, believing in it, and B, funding it. In the business sector, it's more about talking about the benefits of the product that's already there, whilst in the charity sector, that might be something that's not there yet, and you are selling the feeling of hope, which is slightly different. That's why you bring in more people's stories. That's why somebody's been saying before, it's important to hear from the founder of this charity. Why has it been created? What, why, how, what's your purpose, what's your mission, how are you gonna get there? Because again, like with the business, you have a product, you can show it, you can say, that's it, you're gonna get this, this and that. With the charities, mainly you're trying to strive towards something that's yet to be achieved, but you can't just physically say, here you go, look at it. So that's where the difference is. That's why like people are the key, kind of at the heart of the storytelling and marketing there.
Thank you very much.
That's right, thank you.
I work as a creative strategist currently with Cambridge Chronicles, and I'm also a researcher at Anglia Venues University, and I research about social enterprises and businesses. My previous experience has been in advertising, mostly planning and strategy back in India, where I'm from. So I worked with some of the brands like Audible, TCS, and Clove Dental and Cornito. I don't know if you guys have heard of those brands or not. So marketing isn't broken, it's just solving the wrong problem. What I mean by that is what I mean by that is we shouldn't just be chasing impressions, reach and visibility. We need to move beyond vanity metrics, and also brands are tightening their belts. So as marketers, we need to be more creative about the strategy. So can we move on to the next slide? So when I say strategy, people usually complicate it, and it sounds, there's brand strategy, there's communication strategy, then there's creative strategy, but it's actually very simple. It's about how you connect your brand company or your personal brand with people. So there are some two really good examples I thought I would put in this. So one is Spotify Wrapped, something everyone looks forward to every year, sharing with their friends. Oh my God, I'm a bit nervous. My top artists were Sabrina Carpenter and Tate McRae. So that's building community with those people. And then yours might be someone else, Bon Jovi, or then there's a clique that has another artist that they really like. So Spotify is doing that really well by building a community. And then there is Dream Crazy by Nike. So again, there are different executions, but their principle stays same in strategy, which is relevance and emotion. We'll move on to the next. So for me, I believe good marketing happens when two things align. One is the format, is like how you're presenting it. So format could be you're pointing out the features of the brand that you're presenting, or this versus them, or user-generated content and the messaging and how you're framing it. So are you targeting a particular emotion that Dove does really well? Are you talking about educational content, or are you using negative messaging? For example, Patagonia here is telling you not to buy this blue jacket, and that is exactly why you would read this copy and be like, why can I not buy this blue jacket? So these are two things which are really important in my opinion. We can move to the next one. And you don't have to be like a legacy brand to build a good content strategy, right? So for example, there's Liquid Death, challenger brand, which challenges the norms in the category by changing the category code. It is telling you that when you come to a social gathering, it isn't just beer that you can have water, but they've marketed themselves in a way where it's cool. And for example, Anglia Venues over here. So I was reading a bunch of reports last night to prepare for this presentation. So one was Kantar and HubSpot, and they said that social and experiential marketing is going to be the next it thing. And that's exactly what we're doing in this event right now. What does Anglia Venue do? It does events, and also it promotes churches and spaces, and you're experiencing this with us today. Yeah. So is creative strategy for you? So some questions to ask yourself. So for example, I come from a journalism background, and then I moved into advertising. So I also had some interest in filmmaking. So there were so many things in my mind, but I also wanted to research about so many things. So I was confused that can I pick an industry which can help me do all of these things together in a way. So analyzing data and also having creativity bug is important if you want to get into content strategy. Because you need to look at qualitative and quantitative, both of those things. And again, seeing the bigger picture. And if you've been told you're too curious, so maybe it is something that is for you. So I think from the little research that I did up until last year, it was more about being seen, but now it has become about being chosen. So as a brand, as a marketeer, how can you do that? So one thing which is very important, I believe, is knowing when to pivot. So there are so many types of things in marketing, like growth, performance, content, brand, influence. There's so much, but how can you disrupt? You need to think like a CMO. So knowing when to switch gears. For example, taking Adobe into 2011, they had a one-time purchase model, and then they moved on to a subscription-based model, which rocketed their scales. But again, during that time, they were criticized a lot for doing this, and a lot of people stopped using it. But again, they made this decision, which helped them grow substantially going forward. So again, I'm a planning and strategy person. I'm not used to giving these speeches. I'm not good at probably photography, but one thing that I'm good at is research. So this is some research that I found out that maybe you can use as marketeers into the next strategy that you make. The first thing is that you're not just selling to people anymore, you're also selling to systems. So for example, when you open Netflix, it gives you so many recommendations, and it might not even be based on what you watched last time, but there's this new set of movies, and you're probably going to pick what Netflix has recommended you instead of what you might have wanted to watch, if that makes sense. And even with Amazon, when you open, you are buying something, and then you see 10 other things lined up for you. Right? And then there's GEO and AEO. There's so many AEOs. It was SEO last year, but Kantar says GEO is the next big thing. So 3 in 4 AI users rely on AI-driven recommendations daily or weekly. So even if you are an agency, for example, and you Google best agencies to work with, and the first answer that comes as a Gemini prompt is probably what you will take into consideration. You won't go to like all the sources that are out there anymore. I think you should, but like most people don't. So one way you can boost is to use social forums, which is related to GEO. So boost yourself on Reddit, boost yourself on Quora, YouTube comments, boost yourself over there. So that is something that you can use. We can move on to the next. And again, that doesn't mean that the work gets reduced for you as a creative. You just have to navigate how to do it in a new way. So pre-testing, for example, there's Dragonfly AI and David that works on neuroscience. So whatever campaign that you have, you can put it in that AI and it will tell you that it might work or not from the previous data that you've got. And again, like for a campaign, if I want to build something, I can open ChatGPT and I can just be like, okay, hi, I'm Cambridge Chronicles. I'm a creative strategy, build me a campaign. It shouldn't be like that. You can use it in a more creative way. You tell the chat that you're a marketeer with 10 plus years of experience. This is my target audience. This is the basic concept that I have. Help me build it. So have a conversation instead of just giving it a prompt and asking it to make the whole strategy for you. So that's something that you can look at. Move on to the next. And don't play it right now. Yeah, so I also feel that the human element needs to stay intact. One thing that you can also look at is sharing the human that works behind the camera or works behind the strategy. So sharing the BTS of your company could be something very interesting. And I feel like that human element is something that's really well encaptured in this particular video that we can play now. Have you got any questions? Yes.
So, short form content, and then it leads to long form content. So what would be the strategy you would need to apply? Like imagine, how many short clips do you need to create for a customer to consume a long form clip? Like, what is the strategy behind it?
So when you're making your content strategy, for example, I use Notion for it, right? I would put a monthly calendar and then I would see like what content buckets fill the short form category for me. So for example, thrice a week I need to post about the brands that we work with, Reels. And then once a week I can post about this is our team, long form content. Or for example, we do the documentary series with Cambridge Chronicles, which Sam is a part of, he heads that. So when I post about the documentary series that I'm doing once a week or twice in a month, depends really on what your goals are, I think. But it's really important to have that in your content calendar, I reckon, yeah.
So where would you post the long-form content? Is on social
Yeah.
different platforms?
Yeah.
I guess for short-form content,
Yeah.
would you TikTok and so on? Would you say YouTube then?
YouTube is very important. Then there's LinkedIn and there's Upscroll. There are other social media platforms as well. But for example, short form works better for Instagram and then that can drive your growth on YouTube. So everything is interconnected that way. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
I have a question about, is it GEO?
It's GEO, it's Generative Engine Optimization.
Is it spread the internet through forums?
Basically, yes.
How do you come with it?
So, for example, when you think of, I think the person who's speaking after me is an expert in SEO, so he might be able to give you better advice. But from what I have learned is SEO is when you drive traffic on the website. But now we're not really looking that much on websites anymore because people look at the prompt that you get after the Gemini thing after you put a question or something that comes up on ChatGPT. So optimizing it for that through social forums. So we used to think Reddit and Quora isn't so important, but apparently it is. Yes.
Google reviews? Then is that one like more Reddit, Quora and all this?
Those are social forums. Yep. You can, but I think authentic reviews would be ideal to drive growth. Yeah.
How do you quantify if you're being successful with generative engines? How do you know that you're achieving?
So when you, for example, Google best students used to work with in Cambridge, does your name come on top or not? That's one way to look at it. Yeah. That answers your question.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
So you mentioned in your presentation that you do research and
Yeah.
you do it regularly.
Yeah.
But when do you know when to stop? Because if you have a project,
Yeah.
you're gonna go and research everything.
Yeah.
But when do you know this is it? This is all the research I need. I don't need more.
Yes, so research and planning. So first thing I do is that I have certain sources that I know will give me authentic data. So for example, Statista is important, Mintel. No one was understanding my handwriting, but it's helping me think. There's CMI. And then there are journal articles that you can read up on as well. But when you're making a presentation or a strategy, I always like to have a flow. So a start and an end point. When I feel like my research has filled the gaps between the start and the end point is when I know that it's time to stop and maybe make the flow better instead of just doing more research. Yeah. Yeah, I know a starting point and an end point. Now I need to fill all the gaps and connect it with research. Yeah. Yeah.
So you've given some amazing examples of the campaign that you liked. And
Yeah.
do you have like the campaign that particularly stands out to you, a marketing campaign? And is there something in it that we want to learn from?
Have you seen the Super Bowl halftime America ad? The one with the, what's his name? No, not that one, not that one. It's a, no, it's not a campaign. Let me give a better example that everyone knows of. So, like what kind of campaign? Can you repeat the question again? I really like Spotify Wrapped, to be fair. And I like the Super Bowl halftime America ad with, who's the actor in Good, Bad and Ugly? Clint Eastwood. Have you seen that ad? So it was during the time that the mortgage, what was happening in America during that time? The mortgage situation. The housing crisis was happening and a lot of people had a really low morale and they used Clint Eastwood for this halftime America ad. You guys can go back home and look at it. And that really helped people reflect and be like, there's there's something that can be bettered if I put it in the right way. And also, there's so many nice campaigns. You've put me in a spot right now. I'm just thinking of all the campaigns that I can think of. Which other one do I like? The Dove campaigns, for example, are really good. And also, Run Like a Girl. That's something that I really like. The Whisper. Yeah, have you guys seen that one? Yeah, so that's a more, common one. Yeah, I really love that one. Yeah.
Any other questions? I think this is more of a marketing question.
Yeah.
How would you get people to speak about your forums? Like, because of the GEOs?
Yeah. So you really need to be active yourself, like have your company on those forums. And then every time someone is asking you a question, you need to know that if, for example, I'm Cambridge Chronicles, what kind of questions can people be asking? So, and also you need to like make sure that the location that you work in is mentioned because there are so many threads. So for us, it's easier because we have Cambridge in our name. So every time you answer, you need to also like make sure that your location is written there. So then the GEO can trace it and then showcase when the answer reflects, if that helps. Yeah. Yeah.
Let's talk about AEO. Maybe that will help us fight that. So basically, we can go to the next slide. AEO, what we will talk about, it will cover what is AEO, what is the change that we're going through right now, what that means for your website and for your business, what the 4 pillars of AEO are and how we can control those loosely, and then we'll just kind of summarize everything so, we get a clear picture. So SEO is dead, we killed it, here comes AEO, right? Basically, over the course of the last 1 year, SEO traffic has went down between 15 to 25% across different businesses. And that's pretty scary, right? You spend a lot of your time, you've been building your brand, your narrative, your tone of voice and everything. And all of a sudden, a quarter of that traffic is no longer there. If we can go to the next slide. So yeah, the times are changing. SEO's traffic is down. It's predicted that within 3 years, agentic search is going to be the main form of search. And it kind of makes sense, like think about how you interact with the internet today. Like, do you go and Google something or do you tell ChatGPT, hey, I have all of this context I can give you and this is exactly the task I need. what should I do? Who should I hire? It's a lot better of a flow than just searching specific keywords and getting like random results or whoever paid most. So that gives our brands an amazing opportunity to put our narrative forward in a much more human way. So if we go to the next slide, the change is what we just discussed, that we'll be focusing a lot less on keywords and a lot more on our holistic narrative. However, what that means is, we can go to the next slide. What that means is that there is a lot of danger for our narrative. All of a sudden, instead of us controlling what we're saying and our website sitting at the top of the funnel, and it's how people discover us, and then they learn a bit more, and then we convert those people, and then they click the buy button and we make money. Right now, what's happening is AI is summarizing everything you've said on your website or on like Reddit or Quora or whatever, and it spills it out. So we have this dilemma now of AI slop versus brand narrative. And I want us to look into how we can take a bit more control of our narrative so that we don't let AI slop ruin years of dedication towards your brand and your narrative for your marketing. So yeah, as we mentioned before, your website used to sit, well, it sat throughout the funnel, right, in the awareness, consideration, and conversion. But now your website sits at the top only technically. The idea is that the AIs would go and they would scrape your website, they would take all the information that's needed, and then they would provide you the answer. So your website needs to serve bots just as much as it needs to serve people, but at different stages of the funnel. It serves people at the conversion stage, because once people have found out, oh, I need, let's say, ChatGPT, I need a creative agency in Cambridge that also offers its studio space. By the way, Cambridge Chronicles comes first, so good job, us. Yeah, like right now, your website sits at the conversion point where you've already found out about this, but you just want to make sure, like, was this just AI slop or is this for real? So you would go there, you would verify the information, and be like, okay, I like what these people are doing. I get to press the buy button over here. You'll press the buy button. We can go next slide. So what are the pillars of AEO? We can go to the next slide. This looks scary, but don't let it scare you. Basically, Webflow is a web design and development platform. You don't need to know anything about it, but it says that the 4 pillars are content, technical, authority, and measurement. And they measure these in 5 steps. You can actually check your website, how it's performing on AEO by inputting your link on there, and it will tell you, oh, you're scoring well on content, but you're scoring poorly on authority. These are some steps you can take. So it kind of does my job for you guys. But we're not really gonna go into what each step requires. We're just gonna go generally over content, technical, authority, and measurement. So if we go to the next slide, that would be, the first thing is content. And yeah, content is literally where all of your narrative, your whole brand lives. It's where you get to tell your story. It's where you get to put your design forward. It's where you get to like say to the world, this is who I am. However, content is not going to, the content you write is not going to get to your end users, or at least to a lot less of your end users. So you need to write it in a way that is going to allow for agents to scrape it and then be able to format it and give it to people in a digestible manner. So if we go to the next point, one of the most important things about content is recency. The more recent your content is, the more likely it is to be scraped and then referenced by different agents. As you can see here, 95% of ChatGPT citations point to pages updated in the last 10 months. So frequency is really, really important. The agency where I work, we always develop, news or case studies, articles, what's been happening. And then we look back at our clients from 3 years ago and they haven't uploaded anything in the last 2 years, right? Sure, it looks fine for like human eyes because you just remove the uploaded on date and no one knows if this was uploaded yesterday or 2 years ago. But now the agent will know that. So you need to make sure that your content is optimized for those agents. So another thing is quality over quantity. You may think, oh, the more references I have of myself, the better, because that's more streams of drawing that information. Well, no. Quality is much more important because you need to be very authoritative and have ownership of the answers you are providing. Another bit is structure. So as I was mentioning, having that personal type of conversation is much more important than just putting in keywords. But in order to do that, be it on your website, you need to focus on what question would the person actually ask and provide that question, which is a really difficult task that we'll get to. So if we can go to the next slide. So here's a little wall of how we can improve. You can take a picture or whatever, but basically the points are add FAQs, tables of contents, bullet points, refresh content. All of these things, they're going to be really, really impactful in making sure that the latest content you want to get out there will get out there instead of some generic AI stuff. We can go next slide. And here are some questions you can ask for yourself as well, like what are our top buyers' questions? As we scale, how do we make sure our voice stays consistent? Because if I'm creating 1,000 articles, how are all those articles going to sound like they come from me? Clearly, one person didn't write them, right? So it's very important to ask these questions and then be able to action them through your web presence. We can go next slide. So the next bit is technical. We're not really going to nerd out too much here, but the whole point is you want to make sure that your content is structured out in a way that a machine can read it, make sense out of it, feed it to a human. That human reads it in like 2 sentences and is like, great, I'm hiring that guy, or great, I'm hiring this service, and then go on your website and get converted. So what that means is, we can go next. What that means is you gotta have solid web foundations. You know, if you're going to speak about a topic, make sure that that topic sits at the top and is your heading one. And then you explain whatever about it. And then if there's a subtopic, using your heading 2, and then like explaining further below, right? It's just kind of following very, very basic architecture points so that you can improve. We can go to the next slide. It basically has all the bullet points because everyone loves bullet points. They're much more easy to go through than speaking. So yeah, ensuring proper metadata in summary statements, bullet points, callouts and FAQs, alt text, accessibility, all of these things are very, very basic things we need to do for SEO already. But if we don't have those foundations covered, our AEO is going to struggle massively. So yeah, definitely do those. And some of the questions are, how are we keeping up with the evolving standards? Because this was what I read like, 2 weeks ago. In 2 weeks from now, it's going to be different. And in 2 weeks from then, it's going to be different. So the playbook on how we are doing this is being written as we speak. Every day these things changes. So that poses both a threat and an opportunity for everyone's business. Next part is authority. Authority is probably the most important thing. If content is what you give out to people and the technicality is how you give it to both agents and people, authority is the ownership of your content. It's making sure that, yes, I am this person who can say this thing with confidence because I know what I'm talking about. So whoever is reading it, this is truthful information, it's not slop. So if we go to the next slide, some way of improving that authority is adding author bios on your key content. So you're not just leaving some text out there without knowing who this is coming from. Sharing clear contact information, getting spokespeople through podcasts, webinars to interact with you, or you feature on their podcast. Making sure that your name, your business's name, is being put out there, not just through yourself, but through others as well. As we spoke about GEO, that kind of links to this. So whenever a big danger right now is, oh, there's someone hates me and they got some bots to write 100 spiteful comments on Reddit about my business and why it's horrible and no one should ever use it. How do you tackle this, right? How are you going to get more than 100 people to say that your business is great and it's not horrible? Right? So what you need to do is get real people on many platforms and have a variety of voices coming in and speaking about who you are to reinforce you and your brand. And some of the questions you can ask yourself are, how can we engage our community partners? What unique expertise or perspective can we offer in those areas? So another thing that I kind of missed out to talk about is, for example, you're a creative agency. Something that's great to do at the end of the year is what Spotify does with their wrap, right? Just say, what worked in branding this year? Make an article about it. Say, these are the things we discovered worked best in this quarter, in this year. And that way you get to have authority over questions people search. So when they ask on ChatGPT, like, how do I make my brand campaign be awesome and be the best one in Cambridge? They would see that it references you because you have that voice. And then they'll be like, oh, let me see who those people are. And you increase your chances of being hired as whether a freelancer or a business. Next up is measurement. Measurement right now is really difficult because there is no tool that helps you do that. So you're kind of on your own, like the lonely cowboy. Fortunately, Webflow, which is not sponsoring this talk, they are releasing a tool that will be helping out with that. It has a bunch of other features that will make life allegedly easier in the AEO era. So right now there isn't much you can do, but what you can do is you can keep track of where your traffic is coming from. If your traffic is coming from ChatGPT, cloud, etc., that's great. It means that you're successfully converting those people. They're not reading AI slop, they're actually reading your narrative. We can go to the bullet points. So yeah, you can then also test for yourself. Put yourself in the shoes of your clients and ask those questions to the agents. See what it comes up with. Does it mention your brand? If it doesn't, what can I change to make sure that this actually comes up? Alternatively, you can review the outputs that come out when your brand is put out there, because sometimes it will mention, for example, Cambridge Chronicles, but it may say something that has nothing to do with what Cambridge Chronicle actually does, which is where recency and authority of your content comes really to play, because that's how you take control of your content and you make sure that what your business actually is what actually gets out there instead of some generated mumbo jumbo. And yeah, we can skip this slide. We kind of went through everything. So what it really means is that your brand now needs to be more human than ever. You need to speak often about your brand. You need to speak about it in a human way. You need to take ownership of it. And once the tools come so you can measure properly, then you can start putting the metrics in. However, a thing about metrics is if a metric becomes the goal, it's no longer a good metric, right? So you need to make sure that you're measuring for the correct things, but you're not focusing on, oh, I need to have like 40% conversion, otherwise I'm failing. No, you need to make sure your business is doing well at the end of the day. That's the goal. And yeah, if we go on the next slide, thanks for your time, and we can connect by scanning these QR codes. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer. Yeah?
So just wanted to question you about something that someone asked in the audience about the fact that why can't I just use bots to optimize my SEO, or AEO, whatever it is?
Yeah.
And my second question to you is about the human side of things that you mentioned. How do we ensure that?
Okay, let's go from the first question first. So how do you generate like all of those people to comment on you, and like if someone just gets a lot of bots to do it? There isn't much you can do against that right now, other than trying your best to put your voice out there. And also, AI content is very AI written for AI bots, right? So if it's natural human language that gets out there, that is going to be prioritized over AI slop. So having those genuine link backs is going to help your brand a lot, as well as owning your narrative and making sure it's coming from your side. But you can also go in the comments and just correct people. If someone says, Zdravko did a horrible presentation today, Zdravko can go there and say, well, I don't think it was that bad. He covered these points well. And that is going to help because the voice is still there. It's in the comments. As long as it's consistent with your branding, it should work. And what was your second question, sorry?
Basically, how do you balance between chasing vanity metrics but also being human?
Yeah.
How do you balance that?
That's a really good question. And this is going to be one of the things that's going to be hardest in the AEO era, where we want to make sure bots can understand what we're putting out there. So as long as we follow the technical, as long as we follow correct technical frameworks and our content is digestible, e.g. we have a question and then we have obviously an answer below it, that is going to help a lot. And in the answer below, you can be as human as you want with what you're saying. Just don't use a lot of jargon. I think there was a point there about first score. First score is just like how complex whatever you have put out there is. And the trick is, the dumber it is, the better. Because if it's super complicated and you're using all the sophisticated words, no one's going to understand what you're trying to say. So you need to speak in a way that you would be understood. So I guess to summarize it, it would be following correct frameworks, making sure that you ask the questions that people would actually ask, setting those up either as your heading or as your FAQ question or as your call out, and then explaining below that with, once again, human language to the answer.
Do we use the same tools that we were using for SEO? For example, if it is SEMrush or if it is Google Keywords. So are you saying that now that we're doing AEO, there needs to be more tools that are targeted towards one particular kind of AI?
Yeah, basically, before it was like we want to rank highly on these specific keywords because that's how people find us. Now we want to rank for these specific prompts, but everyone prompts differently. I prompt differently than you do, right? So right now it's a lot more diverse. So there isn't still tools that comprehensively cover that. They are being worked on, of course. But what you can do is just experimenting on your own. Of course, go into incognito mode. Like, if I don't go into incognito mode and I prompt anything, it's always like, if I Google like ChatGPT, what's a good web designer in London, it always says, oh, Zdravko is fantastic. And then if I go into incognito mode and I ask it, I never get mentioned, right? So always make sure to go into incognito mode so that it doesn't have that prior history of who you are and like what do you usually look for. Yeah?
One question is structure.
Mm-hmm.
So to what level do the models like scrape? Let's say you got then media as well. So let's say you got a landing page, right?
Yeah.
So I'm searching, is it better to have all the information about your website on the landing page?
So the pages that have the most traffic is the pages that would get cited the most. So stuff like your homepage, service page, and like your top ranking case studies are the things that are going to get the most attention. So those are more likely to be referenced. So yeah, do focus on your key pages, but even if you have like a lot of random bespoke pages, so you have 1,000-page website that no human eyes are ever going to go there, that's fine because that's still going to get read by the agents and give you the advantage there. So do focus on the key pages and make sure that your content is always up to date there. You have your schema up there, you have your NLM and all of those things, but it's fine to have extra pages that can be super, super niche so that they answer exactly that question. Yeah.
How would you communicate this to a model? Let's say you offer a photography service.
Mm-hmm.
That's like photography. And then sometimes people get like it's like text. So do you need to have more text? Like let's say if your photography service, you'd have like pictures on a landing page.
Yeah. Yeah.
Text at all.
This is quite a problem that happens quite often because like your brand is not just your tone of voice. Your brand is your assets, it's how you use design, your colors, your typography. It's a merger of all of those things. And yes, sure, text is what gets fed to the AI agent, but at the end of the day, it's your holistic brand that converts people at the end of the funnel. So you do want to find that balance. And the placement of the text on the page is not as crucial. As long as that content is there, it will be scraped. So it will get to the AI agent. So you see how all websites, they just have like FAQs at the bottom, and like the millisecond you see FAQs, you're like, okay, I'm going to the next page because like ain't nobody ever went below that. So in the same way, the bot would go through those. So you can fit more contentful bits in terms of copy further down the page, so you can still put your photography forward because the content will get scraped. And then the person will be like, oh, okay, he has great photography. Let me go and find out like what he does. And then when he lands on that page, you want to make sure you have optimized for that conversion moment. Another thing is you can alt tag your images. That kind of falls within correct frameworks as well. But just putting good alt tags on what this image is. For example, you took this picture, you would say black and white picture taken in Brighton, expressive, emotional, etc., right? Exactly, being descriptive in things that are not for human eyes. And when presenting for human eyes, presenting it with the best design you could possibly produce. Yeah?
I think a moral question. But I don't know what kind of websites you design. For websites that make money through the traditional web advertising model, like news who need to get Google ads to make money.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that shift from, because a new Cambridge news won't get any money from being surfaced in a Claude or ChatGPT prompt. How do you feel that's going to change the industry in a broader scale? And do you think it's fair? And do you think it's because it's interesting that the companies like Anthropic and Google and OpenAI are going to have such control over what is presented to customers?
Yeah.
Do you think that's scary? Do you think how's that going to change the industry?
Okay, that's actually a really, really good question. There's kind of a few points to it. So there is already a monopoly on advertising. Google and Meta, they have like what, 60, 70, questionably 90% of the market. And a lot of those ads actually don't surface human eyes. Like you do pay for your paid socials, but like that never reaches any human eyeballs. So if we move to a model that's different and doesn't like, you don't actually end up on a website and you never see those ads are never seen anyway, right? So it kind of doesn't remove from it. That's on one side. The other side is, personally, I hate ads. Like you go on a website and there's like 15 ads on the side. Subscription-based model is a lot as a designer, a subscription-based model where you don't have ads just feels a lot nicer. Another thing is, in terms of the potential monopoly that those models would have, they would also have the opportunity of doing what Google is doing right now and prioritizing certain businesses on top of others when you search for SEO. Like, I think the other day, I don't quite remember who I searched, but let's use like Patagonia as an example. I think I Googled Patagonia jacket and you just put North Face up there, you know? So you already have those issues in play. So I don't think those issues are going to necessarily change the whole structure of how this business works. But I think it's a shift that's positive because it kind of breaks the status quo and allows like smaller businesses who can take more risks because, you know, they're not giants that move slowly, to take control and actually rank higher.
The incentives are gone to publish good and accurate, specifically news stories, because they don't get clicks on that, and that will then shrink the number of businesses which are making like up-to-date factual information.
Well, if you're not producing up-to-date factual information, you wouldn't be like showing on those prompts, right? Like when someone prompts, you wouldn't come up if you're not doing content all the time, and people would get just the highline like 2-sentence summary, but people would still want to go there and like read for the whole thing, right? Sure, we are in the super ADHD mind where, you know, if I'm on a topic for more than 4 seconds, I need to scroll to the next thing. And here we should have left like, you know, just some Minecraft playing while I'm talking, right? But even then, people do want to go and like engage with content that's meaningful and that's relevant to them. It's just that right now you get to skip all the noise and get straight to like what would be relevant to you or what the AI overlords think is going to be relevant for you. Yeah?
Weirdly, my web designer got in touch with me this week and said, we've got an offer, we can move all your website because SEO is dying and you need to move to AI. And I was like, okay, that sounds great. I thought he was just trying to get more money out of me, but this is legit, this is happening.
Yeah. As we're speaking, like the research is that 15 to 25% across like different businesses, like they're just losing the SEO traffic, right? So it's not so much that you need to completely rebuild what you have. It's just making sure that what you have works well in feeding the AI models. So making sure you have the correct, like the same rules that made your SEO be good is what's going to make AEO good. It's just that you need to be really, really on top of it. It needs to be recent, it needs to be factual, it needs to be cited, it needs to be referred back to. All of those things, they are relevant for SEO, but they're really, really clutch for AEO. And I don't think he was just trying to take more money from you. There is indeed going to be a lot of value. Yes.
SEO agency industry is like dead. Most SEO.
Not dead, dying.
Dying. Most partners that I work with in the SEO industry are moving to paid or other forms, right? So I think, as a word of warning, if you have a website that you're paying an agency to make it SEO relevant and now they're approaching you to say, actually, I'm going to make it AI relevant, there is an element of them wanting to obviously secure their future, for sure. If you can't physically take control over your website and deliver relevant, up-to-date content regularly without paying a retainer, then it's never going to work for you because ultimately you're not going to meet those benchmarks. I just think in this world we're navigating as marketers or as small business owners, I think it's really important that you are empowered to be able to do that yourself to an extent.
Of course.
That's the nature of the industry.
Yeah, if you have to be reliant on like getting developers or designers such as myself to like do fixes on your website, that's pretty bad. Like it puts you in a position where you're dependent on another entity to do something. So you want to move fast. Well, you move fastest if you're moving in-house or yourself. If you're reliant on third-party people, you're always going to move slower. A lot of the modern tools for like web design and development, they have like really strong CMS collections that allow you to like take control of your content, like do all of those things by yourself. So if those are set up properly, you should be able to do them, but there will still have to be adjustments made. And right now there is opportunity to automate a lot of the things. For example, LLM schema, super nerdy. What basically it means is it scrapes your page and it says, okay, we have a hero section, then we have an about section, and then we have a news section. And in these news sections, there is news 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And it just tells AI models like, this is how this website is built to make it a little bit easier for them. Let's say you upload a new news article or you like shift something on top of something else, so it changes how the schema markup is. That is pretty bad because then the indexing is not matching what is actually out there. So you would need to automate how your schema gets updated. Fortunately, Webflow offers a service for that. So yeah. Did that kind of answer your question?
One last question, and then we wrap it
up.
Yeah.
There's like, how long, let's say your website's got a lot of videos, like images on it, or embedded links, how long it takes for the website to load affect this?
Yes, very much so. Performance, authority, and all those other things we spoke about, everything is really, really important. Because if your performance is slow, and let's say you have a lot of content that's hidden behind some JavaScript and it's waiting on an interaction to be revealed, that content is not immediately available for the bot to scrape. So it's just going to continue the parsing and get to the next section, right? It's okay to have embedded links, but like heavy videos that require a lot of loading, it's not great, especially if they're set up as background videos. If they're like a link that, you get to click and then it opens, it loads, it plays, that's fine. But if it's like a background video and it's like, 50 megabytes and you open the page and you're sitting there on a gray screen, that's going to be bad for humans and for bots.
Amazing, thank you.
Thank you.